When you see this design, finishing, dial and that smooth GMT bezel, you might think, is this a vintage Rolex? But it's not. It's American made, under $1,000, and may be a great choice if the Explorer 2 is your vibe, but you don't want to lose an arm and a leg for it. So stick around and I'll show you if it's an homage, or if it's something that stands on its own with its own character, DNA and design philosophy. Meet the Vaer G5 Pacific GMT, an American-made diving GMT. And no, they didn't pull any punches or lie naming it a GMT because it uses a Miyota 9075, one of the only true GMTs you can get in the price range. And as a diver, no lies there either, with 200 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown, meaning you can obviously dive with it. On top of that, it has a few extra spicy and exciting bits too that we can get onto a bit later. First, I want to mention this is clearly based off of a vintage Explorer 2, reference 1655, spliced with some GMT masters from the 50s, a few different references. Same proportions, same GMT aesthetic, same rugged and versatile design, but this one comes with a different pedigree, different lugs, different hands, a coin edge bezel rather than smooth, no crown guards, and more differences like a sapphire open display caseback to show off the heart of the watch itself. So yeah, I would actually say this watch is different enough if you hold it side by side to an Explorer 2. It has enough differences and variations to say it's not an homage, it's more so just inspired. And inspired by something very beloved that they've then built upon further and made, in terms of quality, some leaps and bounds compared to other brands in the price range that we'll get onto throughout this video. Now, very importantly, you need to know if you can even wear it in the first place, because why buy a watch you can't wear? Proportion wise, it measures 39mm across with a 48mm lug to lug and about 12mm of thickness. On my wrist, which is particularly small, it lands squarely in the comfort zone of the old Explorer 2 without feeling too big or too dainty. So for smaller wrists like mine, it works well, and for bigger wrists, it works even better. The brushing is also sharp and consistent like a tool watch. There's no glitz, but no gunk either. It feels purposeful and reserves, and the finishing is similar quality to great brands like Zelos, Christopher Ward, your lower end Oris and Longines. But it is less angular when it comes to the finishing and the design, and more curved in a way that does work, but also means that the finishing doesn't look as flashy and or stand out half as much. The bezel also has some really nice action, so let's just quickly have some audio of that. Oh, sorry, there we go. Had to take off that. Right, let's hear some audio of that. Nice. Really, really nice bezel action there. As for the screw down crown and the bezel itself, both of them are very nicely made. They don't dig into your hands like some do, but they also don't slip and slide. They have about the perfect grip, not going too far and not underdoing it. Plus the crown is branded, which is always a nice touch. Talking about a nice touch, that dial. It's clean, it's crisp, it has a date at 6 that's colour matched and 15 layers of old radium superluminova to suit its more vintage aesthetic. And of course, some gorgeous indices and hands that just work perfectly together. It echoes the Explorer 2 vibe, but it has its own language and is different enough to where you can't mistake one for the other, even with close-up macro of the dials not showing the branding. You get the reference, you feel the nostalgia, but it doesn't feel or look like some Rolex knockoff. And underlight, the indices and hands also pop. Not too flashy, but they do have presence, and they do also pop with the lume. Flipping it over, you get that sapphire case back, which then further reveals the actual movement of the watch, which is something that no vintage watches really did. Not really until the neo-vintage days of the late 90s, early 2000s. And I personally think it's quite nice to see the movement working, and the movement finishing too, because it adds to the value of the watch. If you get bored looking at the dial, like I sometimes do, I genuinely prefer looking at the movement. It's just interesting to see how it works, and it's really fun to learn about watchmaking in general. I mean, the 9075 is also just a great movement. An adjustable local hour hand. It hacks, it has hand winding, even though it is fully automatic. You can leave it off for 2 days and it will still tell you the correct time because it has a 42-hour power reserve. And you can look at that hand absolutely go, with it being 4 Hz, meaning it ticks nice and fast in a smooth way to the eye. Now realistically, Rolex makes the best movements in the price range objectively, but the difference gets smaller as it climbs. Diminishing returns, you know? I mean, a 5% better movement might cost 20 times as much, because the higher you go, the more difficult it is to actually increase it beyond that baseline. And though this movement is definitely worse than a Rolex 3135 or even a 3235 or with their new dynaptial escapement, etc., it's still like 15-20% worse than a Rolex movement at a tenth of the price. I mean, as you can see here, it ran at about +4 seconds a day on the time grapher, with everything else looking good. Now that is COSC level accuracy without the certification. It's pretty, it's smooth, and though it doesn't have Rolex polish, it still just works. And though the bracelet doesn't have Rolex level brushing or polishing, I tried it on and it has solid end links, it is brushed through with polished chamfers, it has a milled clasp and an on-the-go micro adjustment system. For this price, pretty much everything you could want, it definitely feels good. Now it did also come with a rubber tropical style strap, which feels light and it gives that extra sporty, robust feel and look. Though I personally am a bad person to ask here, because I don't like rubber straps in general. It is good quality for what it is, I'm just not a rubber guy. So let's actually talk about how it stacks up to the 1655. Well, size-wise, it's nearly identical. The dial layout, vintage Explorer energy. The GMT hand, it's the same colour, same tone. The steel bezel is the same except it has coin edging. However, obviously, the 1655, it's a rare vintage Rolex reference. Now I am personally a vintage over modern guy myself, even though they are objectively worse made. But honestly, if you aren't buying for passion and you're just buying for a well-made watch, this watch here, it has modern case, it has a modern bracelet, modern specifications, and in terms of just pure quality, if you were holding the vintage Rolex and this watch outperforms it by a mile. Because technology improves over time, and every few years we jump another step in terms of watchmaking, in terms of finishing, and in terms of build quality. But I mean, a 1655 is a good 40 grand since it's a rare reference. So to be more fair, let's compare it to a modern day Explorer 2, something that's higher quality and such, which is easily 8 to 9 grand. And the Vaer nails the feel, the function, and 80% of the quality for under a grand. The finishing, the movement sophistication, obviously not Rolex level, but for what you save, it's a strong value proposition, which is what all micros are. Compared to higher end brands, because the brand prestige, brand name, rarity, and exclusivity is the majority of that price difference, micro brands are just the best budget options. I mean, here we have great proportions, a true GMT movement, a sapphire caseback, a clean legible dial, a comfortable feel, and good finishing, all from an American brand that builds its watches to last. Now I won't lie, the AR coating for the crystal could be better because the glare does pop up, and if you wanted a Swiss movement or Rolex level polishing and finishing and specifications, this won't satisfy this itch, but that's not what it's aiming to be. If you want the Explorer 2 in spirit, that rough, versatile, aesthetic sort of watch with that lovely vintage feel, but you don't want a Rolex price tag, I think that this is a brilliant alternative. It was built to wear as a watch, not built to flex or sit in a collection box. Hey, if you've made it this far, thank you. I really do put a lot of time and effort into these videos to make them as helpful and enjoyable as possible. So if you learned something or you just like the watch or the quality of the review, just do me a little favour, drop a like and a subscription, takes you 3 seconds, costs you nothing, it helps me out greatly, and it means that hopefully in soon time I'd be able to go into this full time. And never forget, time keeps ticking, so use the time you have wisely.